Hi, Midwest GameFest gamers. So, thanks again for joining me. We were not able to get some of the people that we were hoping to be able to do a Ask Me Anything kind of chat, but that's okay. I'm here and I will answer anything I can answer that you might have questions about for miniature painting. I'm also happy to talk about the Hero Forge painting that I did earlier. So just feel free to ask me whatever questions that you might have. Just drop them in the chat. If I don't see them right away, I'm going to be trying to monitor that a little bit. And then I have somebody that's helping me out with some things too. So, and I have some miniatures here, some ones that we painted this over this weekend with Midwest Game Fest. And then some of my own. So feel free to ask me whatever you'd like. Looks like we've got our first question in here. What is your favorite mini you painted this weekend? Oh gosh, what a great question. So they all were super fun in their own way, right? Like we had our owl bear, which this was my pre-painted one, but like we've got our owl bear here, had all this fur and feathers. It was so much fun. And then we have our dragon that we put some metallics on, but we didn't do a full metallic coating on, which was really fun. We still gave him some really nice shadows and things. And then we had our tiefling, which was really fun. We kind of did some darker colors on him and getting his skin colors perfectly done. Anyway, so they were all really, really fun. But for my absolute favorite, gosh, I really just love this owl bear. I just think I know he's kind of got a fierce face, but he's so cute. And so I really like this owl bear. I love dry brushing and I love miniatures that have lots of detail and texture to them. So this was probably my favorite. I really loved this owl bear so much. I really like that. My favorite. We got another question. What was an advanced painting technique that you think is worth the time it takes to learn and do? Oh gosh. Okay. So, advanced painting technique that I think is worth learning. Gosh, there's a lot of really just great ones out there, to be honest. One of my kind of favorite things that I have learned to do, we touched on it with our tiefling on his sword, which I didn't necessarily do a perfect job on, but hopefully you guys kind of got the concept that we're watching on that one. But one of my favorite techniques that I have kind of learned, and I still have way far to go on, is being able to apply color to a metal or what should be considered metal without using metallic colors or metallic paint. It can be really, really hard. And like I said, I'm still not perfect at it, but I'm getting better at it the more I try. So still working on it. But you can see this guy here that I painted last year for ReaperCon. He has like lots of metal armor on, right? And so I painted him and I did not apply any metallic paint to his actual armor. Everything, all the highlights and things like that really make this look like it's metal are all done by blending and highlighting of the miniature and being very specific about where I place that highlight. And where I blend those different areas and where my shading is, especially in like interior pieces and things like that, because your metal, when you look at the metal, will really have different locations it's gonna shine more and things like that. So if you really like painting miniatures that have a lot of metal like aspects to them, whether it's armor, whether it's weapons, whatever it might be, I think that is just a great technique to learn how to do, to be able to not just rely on straight metallic paint. There's nothing wrong with metallic paint, and we even used it on our dragon, which was really fun. And then we also used it on our treasure that we painted, and that was pretty fun too. And you can dry brush with metallics, and it really looks really neat, and it just kind of gives it a little something extra. But doing metal painting or painting on as if you're painting metal without using metallics is really fun. I think it's a great technique to learn how to do if you can do that. So that would be probably my thing. Did you have any tips or techniques for clothing in addition to metal? Okay, so clothing, especially like drapery and stuff like that, you really have to think about your lighting for those kind of things when you're painting those different areas. And so if you're painting for tabletop versus painting for competition, it's pretty different how you want to approach that. If you're painting for competition, you really want to be a lot more cautious about where your lighting is and things like that. And it's not necessarily that your lighting is just right there on the surface. Let me grab a paintbrush so I can kind of point to. So it's not that the lighting is just right here on this outside of this surface. For this particular guy, I had what I had done for competition. I had his lighting coming from this side over here, and so for me, it did end up kind of have those different areas be the highlights. But if your lighting is coming from like his front side, and we really only see the side of this, and we want to be careful of when we're blending to kind of do that and like hit where your lighting hits and things like that. So that being said, think about for competition, think about where your lighting is coming from. But if we're just painting for tabletop, we don't necessarily need to worry about that as much, and we can kind of have a little more freedom and a little more fun, and think about how dark this interior piece is going to be. That is going to be much darker than the outside pieces here. And don't be afraid to go super dark with it. So if you notice on this miniature here that I have, this part inside here is nearly black. I think if you've watched any of my streaming throughout the weekend, I really like my blue liner instead of black. And so this is like a blue liner. I'm pretty sure that's what I used in there. So inside is like a blue liner. And I went all the way to nearly a white on this outside here when I was doing my blending for that. And so something you can do to help with that transition is do the inking technique that we had talked about during some of my streamings this weekend, where you put your color and you start with your darkest color, add your lighter color on the top areas, and then add a slightly lighter color on top of that, and then go back and take your darkest color again and add plenty of water to it to thin it out. And then when you apply that onto your fabrics and your clothing and stuff like that, so even on the inside here, where the inside of his tunic kind of has some creases and things like that, I could go in and do the inking and apply that very thin paint onto that inking or into those creases, and it would just kind of make it pop a little bit more and just show a large difference between the shadows, so the inset shadows of the miniature versus the top layers of the highlighting that we're doing. So that inking can really be a really easy tabletop version of getting those shadows and highlights to really pop on the table. So that can be pretty fun. I don't think I have another one here that I've really done that inking with, but it can work really, really well on cloth and things like that. I think this guy's beard I did that in, actually. Yeah, now that I think about it. So this guy's beard, that's what I did. I put a really dark color, then I painted the orange on top. I put a few highlights of orange in there for his beard, and then I went back and used an ink to fill in those creases with that really dark color, so that way it would really show those shadows really well on him. So that's beard hair, but it kind of is similar to how we would paint different clothing and fabrics and things like that. Okay, what are your favorite things to do while you paint, like TV, music, playing music, things like that in the background? Okay, so I I do like to have something on in the background. It's definitely the type of painter I am, for sure. I think the biggest thing I usually kind of keep on in the background is going to be like a TV show that's very lighthearted, and that maybe I've seen several times. Like maybe I'll turn on The Office. Or I don't know if anybody watches New Girl. I really like New Girl. And so sometimes I'll start that just in the background, just so like there's something going on, but I'm not gonna be too distracted because I've rewatched all of the New Girl episodes like maybe 2 or 3 times, and The Office I'm pretty sure I've seen like 5 times, so I can actually hear what's going on and already know what's happening on the TV. And actually I've been doing that with Avatar: The Last Airbender, that animated TV show. I really like that one too, and I've been actually having that in the background while I do different things too. If I don't really feel like having something on, or I don't maybe have my TV available or something like that, like maybe my husband's doing something on it or whatever, then I will turn on music too, and I'll just listen to whatever kind of like speaks to me while I'm painting my particular miniature. If I'm trying to do something that's gonna be a little like calmer, like I'm painting a humanoid or something, I probably don't want like some real intense music on. So I'll try and pick something that's a little calmer, but still kind of like I can hear something in the background. So that's my take on it. But you know, whatever makes you feel comfortable and like really helps you focus. Do you ever use a literal spotlight to help you find your shadows? Actually, that's a really great question. I have done that before. I'm not as good at doing that technique as some other people are, of using an actual spotlight. But something I have found really helpful for me, or when I'm painting my metal miniatures, when I'm priming them, I'll cover them in like one color, so maybe white, or maybe I'll use black as my primer, and then I will take a spray bottle of the opposite color. So if I based it in black, then I'll probably use white, or if I based it in white, I'll use black, and I will kind of get an idea of what angle I want a light to come from, and I will just spray the miniature at that angle with my primer spray, and it kind of shows like where that lands is where your light would be hitting and would be coming from. And so that can really be helpful. That can be a really good technique, that you don't have to have a light constantly trying to move the light and make sure it hits in the right spot and things like that. It's something that's going to stay on your miniature, and you don't have to try and adjust back and forth. I'd say the easiest combination with that technique is black underside first, and then white spray over top of the area. That is probably going to be your best combination, because the white is going to allow you to be lighter as you paint, as you layer on top of it, than the black would be. So black underside and then a white spray on top, and that'll really help show where your light is hitting. And then you can always still use an outside light to kind of look at that. My other technique that I try and do when I'm doing that is I will also like hold my miniature at the angle that I'm trying to like see the light come in on. So for this guy here, let me see if I can find, I think right about there is where I kind of was trying for a light source. So if you look at the camera, I'm gonna grab my paintbrush so I can point for you guys. So if you look at out there, so I tried to make like a lighter spot here. His armor has like this light markings kind of down at here, and then you can see on his cloak the light marks there. And then you can also see, because of how the light was coming in, that I also have the little spot on this beholder's eye, and then along the ridges of these eye stalks for this mini beholder, I have some there. I don't know how well you could see it, but there's kind of a light streak this oh my goodness, I forgot the name of it, but his weapon here, and then I have a bit of a light streak along the eyebrow. Anyway, so I kind of looked at the image of the, or I'm sorry, at the miniature from that particular angle, and tried to see, okay, where is my light source kind of hitting? Maybe it was kind of more like that. But anyway, so I'll also kind of do that. But the spray paint technique of just like finding where you want your light source to come from and then spraying that white on top can also be useful. And you can do that with plastic minis. Just be super careful that you really only give it like one spray and really let that dry. And make sure you wash the mini ahead of time, because if your mini has any oil on it, the plastic minis have any oil on it, it will kind of make that spray paint just kind of tacky. So you just have to be careful when you're doing it on a plastic mini. It's not impossible, just be careful. Metal minis, it's like super easy to do on metal minis. So, okay. So yeah, so that's my shadowing kind of trick, I guess, that I use sometimes. What are your favorite colors that I'm using right now? Okay, so I have really been getting into, like on my people and things like that, I've really been getting into some burgundy colors. I'm really liking like the dark red colors and stuff. I don't think I have brought anything over with me that I am really working on too much. Oh, actually, kind of funny. My zombie that I've been painting on, I think it looks kind of brown in the video, but really this is his outfit that he's wearing is a burgundy color, and that's just a zombie. I don't even know why I picked that color. It's just sometimes I just kind of, what am I feeling like, and that's kind of been the color that I've really been leaning towards a lot lately. That's probably why I picked this like pinkish color for this tiefling, is because I really just like that burgundy color on different things, and I'm just really enjoying that right now. And not that it goes well with the burgundy, but for miniature hairs and stuff like that, I really am liking playing with like oranges and reds for hair as well. And so that's been kind of fun for me to kind of test out different hair colors and things like that. And so we didn't get to it on the tiefling, but I was kind of wanting to go back in and put some like highlighted spots on his hair and different things like that. It probably wouldn't have been orange, but maybe like a little bit of red in some of his hair or something, like maybe he colors a little piece of it or something like that. So, but yeah, I've really been into orange and red hair right now, and kind of trying out those colors. And I think it's super fitting for the dwarf, right? It's they just kind of just have this aspect where they can just really pull off a bright red or a bright orange beard. So it's kind of fun. And then this little guy's bald, so just his beard hair. All right, so yeah, I think that's kind of the colors that I'm really kind of sticking to right now and really enjoying. Then I got to find things that work around it. Okay, what do we got? Do you ever use craft paints for any techniques? Craft paints. I'm guessing that you probably mean like there's some paints out there that are I'm trying to think of what, like an example, like that kind of go on a little drier, and like they almost kind of look powdery when they dry. Oh, okay, never mind. So Faye is asking about, so like the Walmart paints that you get, or just like the big tubes that you can get of like acrylic paint and things like that. So I have used those kind of ones before. They are, yes, you're actually right, Faye. They are super thick. They're very, very thick. And so I don't like to use them if I can avoid it. I will say that I also paint ceramics sometimes, and they work fantastic for ceramics. So yeah, I definitely use that kind of paint on ceramics. But for my miniatures, it's a little thicker than I kind of would like it to be. And it doesn't quite thin out as well as some of the other paints that you can get for miniature painting. To be as thin as I like it to be, it doesn't mix very well with the water as well. So not impossible to use by any means. You just have to find the right texture, and you might try it out on like some bigger miniatures first. So like this guy that I have, I would probably try that out on maybe somebody about this size, things like that. Places that I'm going to be able to cover more area and really test out how those paints are interacting with my miniatures before I start applying it and trying it for some of my smaller miniatures. So if you wanted to play with some of those thicker paints, something that you can get at Walmart and things like that, then don't be afraid to do it. And then I would add water to it a little bit, make sure that it's thoroughly mixed together and things like that. And then I would try it on like a larger surface so you can really test it out pretty well. And then as long as you've kind of added enough water to it, if it got to the point that you were like, oh, this is just not working, you should be able to take a paper towel or something and just kind of wipe that off. And it would probably still show in your creases and things like that. But if you were putting your base coat on anyway, then really that's fine. As long as it's not too thick and you're not losing any detail, you should be absolutely fine. So yeah, so short answer is I don't prefer to use them, but it's not impossible to use them. That you definitely can, especially in your larger minis. So okay, what's the next question? When you showed off your color theory stuff, did you prefer 2 complementary palettes, 3 complementary palettes? I think the color was called, oh yes, okay. So actually, yeah, why don't we I'm gonna actually share my screen with you all and go to that color complementary wheel that I was using before. So let me go ahead and do that. And so so on this wheel, just kind of playing around with different things on here, I do like the split complementary color. The double complementary is still nice, especially if you're painting something in a more simplistic area. So like the tiefling that I had painted before, his outfit didn't have a whole lot of details to it, and so so I could have probably used just this double complementary color and been absolutely fine. And I used kind of like an olivey green color, so I'm gonna say it's probably not quite that. Maybe right in there. And I'm not actually looking at my base color right now. I'm actually looking at color A for what color I kind of used for my undertone. Somewhere in this range is kind of what I used for that color. Maybe a little darker, maybe a little more olivey colored. And it was a little paler than that, just a little bit, but it's pretty close. So if we look at color A here, and that's kind of what I was using for my outfit, instead of the yellow that I used in some places, I could have used this like lighter pale lime kind of color. Well, it's not really lime, but like this pale green. I could have used that color and it would have looked really nice and in pairing with this olivey color. And then for my like trim on my outfit and things, I could have used this like really beautiful violet color, and it really would have made the two pop, you know. I went with more subtle colors where I have the green and the black, so it's very much more subtle. And I did use red on his sash, but I was trying to complement and pull out some of his colors from his skin tone for the miniature, because he has a different skin tone than our normal human creatures might. So so I was just kind of complementing that piece instead of complementing his outfit colors. However, I could have absolutely used this really just beautiful violet color and used this this pretty like pale violet color to do highlights on his sash that went around, or on the trim of his tunic, and that would have just looked really, really nice together. So when you're working on different things, the complementary colors is really nice when there's something simple, but when you get something that's a little more complicated, this split complementary color can also be very handy. So if I start looking at this one, let's see if I can find, it's definitely not that light. So it's my base color here is really showing not as dark as what I was using. So I'm gonna, and actually I didn't show this when I was talking about color theory last time, but if you scroll down, you can play around with the different colors down here at the bottom, and also kind of look at the tones and the value, the shade value and things like that, the brightness of your different colors. So actually this C now is actually very, very close. Yeah, just pulling up my tiefling here. That's very, very close to the color that I was using. So now, if I really wanted to try and do something that was complementary, and that's actually why I chose that olive green back when I was picking out my miniature to begin with, because I knew that olive green was going to really show a difference in his skin tone versus like what he was wearing. And so, so you can kind of see here, maybe I didn't pick the perfect color to complement it, but that is why I chose that slightly more pinkish color, because I knew that was going to complement well for me and really help those two colors stand out from each other, so it didn't just look like his clothes were blending into his skin. So anyway, so it's, I didn't actually use this when I picked those colors, but that was where my thought process was kind of going. So you can kind of get an idea of that. But yeah, the split complementary color can really be pretty nice, and really give us a lot of ideas and what colors really just go well together. And so the more you play with these little scales down here at the bottom, you'll notice that the circle up top is still moving. So just because you change one color on here doesn't mean that your other colors aren't going to shift with you. They absolutely are going to shift with what you're using and things like that. So if you can find your base color that you're planning on using, or what is your main color that you're planning on using for your miniature, then you can really find some really nice complementary colors that go with it. And this can really do well for more complicated pieces that have more things going on in them. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question. We'll go ahead and go back to the table view here. There we go. Okay, what else might we have pop up here? We talked about those. I also think that website is very cool. Thank you, Faye. What is your preference between gray, white, and black primer? Okay, that's also just what a great question. When I'm actually doing like primer itself, on my metal minis, I do prefer like a stark white or a stark black. Depending on what I am going to be painting on that mini will depend on which one I go with, whether I go with black or whether I go with white. If I'm planning something that's going to be lighter, like a yellow, an orange, or something that's going to be like white or cream colored, or if a large portion of what I'm going to be painting is going to have that color on it. I guess I don't really have anything else in front of me for that, but like if I have a person that has like a big cloak on, and I want that cloak to be like a pretty green, or not green, pretty cream colored cloak, then I'm probably going to go ahead and use white, because then I can always go back in and give a base coat of black and easily cover up that white in any other parts that I would like to kind of have a darker undercoat. So it's always better to kind of start with white if you think you might be using lighter colors, and then do a base coat of black or a darker color if for any of those darker areas that you want to to be more shadowed or internal and things like that. So that's my thought, is that you start with white if you're wanting to use lighter colors. If I was planning on a bunch of stuff to be darker colors, or colors that are like thicker, my paints that are thicker and cover on the first go around pretty well, then black is absolutely fine. If I want a character who's going to have a lot of dark colors on him, like I want that cloak to be maybe like a dark green or a burgundy color, then I'll probably go ahead and do black. Now for my plastic minis, I don't typically do a primer necessarily, but I do a base coat for my plastic minis. And when I'm doing a base coat for my plastic minis, I actually don't really like to use black, white, or gray. I usually try and use some other very dark color that will complement the colors that I'm going to use on my mini. So for this owl bear, I had us use a blue liner on this one. So that's just the name of the paint, but it's just like a super like midnight blue paint, because the browns that I was using, I thought that would complement those browns really well, and I'm pretty happy with how he turned out. So so I actually I'm trying to think. Yeah, I did not use black on this miniature at all. And if anybody was using the exact same paints as me, none of us used black on this miniature. We used a very, very dark blue, but not an actual black color. So, and that was what I base coated the entire thing in, was that blue liner. Now for this beholder that I kind of have started, and our gold dragon that we did, I also didn't use a black on them either. So the base coat for this dragon is a very dark red color. I think it was either cinnamon red or scarlet red, but anyway, it was a very dark red color, because I knew I was going to go all the way up to this yellow, and even my blue liner would be like it would just be too dark, and this yellow would have a really hard time coming through at the end. Even with multiple layers, it would still kind of, it would be rough to get a very clean, really pretty yellow. So I did my base coat and all of that dark red color, and then I built up from there, where we added some oranges and then some yellows and then so on and so forth. So I actually don't really like to use white, black, or gray when I'm doing my my base coat. I like to kind of use a complementary dark color. I shouldn't say complementary, because it's not actually complementary, but something that will show those highlights well, or those lowlights well, and still make it really look nice without having that like dark undercoat of black, or just a white, like white streaks and things like that. So that's kind of my take on primer / base coating. Okay, let's see. I've got you into painting miniatures. Okay, using base coat of blue is really cool. Oh, good. I'm glad you like the idea of that blue base coat. So what got me into miniature painting? Okay, let's see. I'm trying to remember the first time I ever painted a miniature. So I actually didn't start playing any tabletop role-playing games until I was a sophomore in college. And I met some friends that had been doing that, and I was like, yeah, sure, I'll give it a try. You know, I've always kind of been interested in that kind of stuff anyway, and I love fantasy kind of things, so so I thought I'd give it a try. And the first time we played a it was a horror-based tabletop game. I can't even remember the name of it now, but I probably have the book around here somewhere. So I played a horror-based game, and the game master let me play a werewolf that had trouble controlling my shifting form, so it's not like I could just be a werewolf whenever I wanted to. So we kind of worked that out, so that was kind of fun. And then after I played that character for a little while, I was really excited about her. Her name was Sophie, and she was studying to be like a medic and things like that. And so I wanted to be able to, and it was also based in more modern times. I wanted to be able to like do something with her. And I had a friend that was in that game that also painted miniatures, and he would paint his miniatures that we gamed with. And I was like, man, I want one of those. I want to be able to put my miniature on the table. And so he's like, well, I'll show you how to paint. So I was like, okay, awesome. So we went out together and we found a miniature that like I felt like represented my character really well. And he sat down with me and we kind of painted it up. And when I got done painting her, and I actually still have her on my shelf over there, when I got done painting her, I was like, this is so much fun. This is super cool. But you know, I'm just a poor sophomore college student. And these were my only friends that gamed. And so I was like, not able to really buy too many paints and things like that. So I really only kind of got to paint when he wanted to paint. And so I just, whenever I could and whenever he was willing to let me paint with him, I would jump in, get to and paint with him and things like that. And then as I got older, I found some more friends that also liked to do things. And so I found a guy that like painted a lot that I became friends with, and he really helped me out a lot. And he actually let me borrow some of his paints, and like so I got to keep them here because he lived in another town. And it was just it just kind of built on from after that. And then I would go online and search for minis, and you know, as I got a full-time job, and I was like, well, now I can buy my own miniatures and buy my own paints. And so then it just kind of built up and built up. So yeah, just kind of when I got into role playing, I just wanted to be able to see my character and have fun with that. And so yeah, but I've always kind of enjoyed painting things. I actually minored in studio art in my undergraduate. Not that that gives me a whole lot of knowledge about art. There's a lot more talented people out there than me. I just really enjoyed it. And so when I found out that you could do this and paint something and like be like, that's me, that's my character, it was just so exciting. Or, you know, I really love painting creatures and monsters and stuff like that. So when I started being a dungeon master, I was like, oh yeah, I want to paint something so that when I throw that on the table, the player wants to look at it and be like, oh my gosh, that's what we're facing, holy cow. Although a lot of things that I throw out there, like the owl bear and my dragons and stuff like that, they're like, oh, can I be friends with it? I feel like a lot of my players want to be friends with those things. Anyway, so that's kind of how I got into that. All right, looks like we got a couple other questions posted. Let's take a look. Do you ever get halfway through a paint and want to start over? Yes, I absolutely will get about halfway through a paint, or maybe not even that far, but there's so much paint on the miniature and just be like, okay, ready to start over on this thing. I actually probably have about a handful of miniatures that are just sitting in a box in my room that I haven't done anything with because I didn't like where they were going and I didn't do anything with them. So I just kind of like put them aside. I will say that those miniatures are from before I started using my water down my paint technique and where, like I did this weekend, where I made sure I added enough water to make my paint thin enough that it would go on and I could layer on top of it. So those miniatures that I kind of messed up with, or I didn't like the colors that I chose, or whatever the reason for that handful or a couple handful of miniatures that I really haven't touched in a while, their paint on them was kind of thick, and I honestly have not really done a whole lot with them to get that paint off. Metal miniatures, a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times you can strip the paint off of the metal miniatures and then go back at it again, and that's fine. Plastic miniatures, though, that paint really kind of seeps in there, so it is pretty hard to get that paint off of your plastic miniatures if you want to start over again. You can try by like using a toothbrush and brushing on the paint, brushing on the miniature with some warm water. I'll be honest, I'm probably not the person to ask how to actually start them over, because so far I just have put them in a box and just haven't touched them again, and I actually need to do some research myself on how to fix them so that, or how to get that paint off of my plastic minis so that I can start over again. So I apologize, I don't have a great answer for that one, but it absolutely does happen. Let's see. How long does it normally take you to finish a competition piece? And do you have any of your work, any that you're working on right now? Okay, so my competition pieces, it's hard for me to judge how long it really takes me to finish a competition piece, because I'm really bad about, like, I'll get so far on it and then I'll just be like, oh my gosh, I can't, like, my brain gets stuck. It's like writer's block, except for it's painter's block. I get to a point where I'm like, oh, I'm not sure where I want to go with this next, and I don't want to mess it up, so I'm just gonna set it there for a minute. I'm just gonna let it be. And so I'll step away, and it may be a couple of days that I step away from it before I come back to it. And so then, yes, painter's block is real. But yeah, so then I'll come back to it later and start it back up again. So it can really kind of be hard for me to judge how long it actually takes me. So it may take several months for me to finish a piece, but it's because I keep sitting it down. I'm like, okay, I'm going to come back to you later, because I don't want to mess it up, you know. It definitely takes me longer. So some of these miniatures and that we did this weekend, I would pretty much, like, these owlbears, I totally call them finished. My dragon, I see a couple of things that I might want to touch up, just, you know, just to do it. So those, like I said before, I've considered those tabletop paintings. They took me, some of them took me pretty much the full 4 hours that we had planned for them. Although the owlbear really only took me like approximately 3 hours, and that's while I was talking and trying to explain what I was doing. If I was just doing it by myself, I probably could have knocked it out in about 2 hours or so, possibly less if I was like really certain what I was trying to do. And the tiefling, I probably could have knocked out in about 3 hours if I wasn't trying to like walk through everything. And I did kind of have a few oopsies on him that I went back and fixed while we were recording and things like that. So those ones, you know, anywhere between 2 to 3, 4 hours for a non-competition piece, a tabletop piece. This miniature here, which I did enter into a competition at ReaperCon, not this year, but last year. I think this guy probably took me a total of 10 hours, maybe a little bit more even, to totally finish all pieces of it. And I still didn't even get it to the point where I actually wanted it to be before I entered it into the competition, because I was literally painting this one like down to the wire. But I started this one when I got to ReaperCon on Thursday night, and I worked on it throughout, like in between the classes that I was taking at ReaperCon and things like that. So I think it took me probably anywhere between 10 to 12 hours to finish this guy. And like I said, it's not even where I actually wanted it to be to complete it. I really would have preferred to fix up his base more. It's really just a solid color, and I would have liked to have done something more with it. And I would have liked to have covered this oval base that I have them sitting on. I would have liked to have covered it with something too, and maybe almost connected that to his base so that it looked like it was ground that just continued and it went over top of their clear parts down here, because you can see where I glued their little clear pieces onto this base, and I would have preferred that not be visible when I finished this piece. I just ran out of time before it needed to be submitted to be judged. So yeah, it could take quite a while to do a competition piece. All right, what else we got? How many completed minis do you think you have? Do you sell or give them away to friends once you run out of room? Well, I haven't quite run out of your room just yet, but so I probably have I have more unpainted minis than I have painted minis, that's for sure. But I probably have around maybe about 50 painted minis probably that I have painted. And then I have about 3 miniatures that were painted by other people that I have kept, or they've given to me. And then I have one piece by one of the professional painters the professional painters at ReaperCon, sorry, that she does sell her stuff, or actually I think mine was the first one she sold, but she sells her miniatures now, and it's just a beautiful piece, and it was amazing. So I have her competitive piece that she sold to me, that's over there, but I don't really usually sell my miniatures. But that being said, I have sold 2 before. Both of those were, I guess, commissioned pieces, you might call them. I had friends who do different things that asked me to paint miniatures for them, and then they just gave me some money for them, you know. And actually, for those of you that have gone to Midwest GameFest over the past several years, you probably would know the individuals that commissioned me to paint one of them. I painted a beholder. He was mostly purple and green, but had some prismatic pieces to him and things like that. But I painted a beholder for the dungeon crawl group that comes and sets up their dungeon at different conventions and things like that. And they open the rooms as characters go through them, and the whole point is like how quickly they can kill your character in the game, and you just basically respawn and play again. I don't know if you remember them. The gentleman that I personally know that helps with that is John West. He and the guy that owns the dungeon commissioned me to paint that beholder for them, and so that was really, really fun. I super enjoyed it, and it's kind of cool to think that I have a beholder out there that is, you know, in a dungeon, so that's kind of fun. And then the other one that was a commission piece was just a friend that just wanted me to paint a miniature for them, so that was really fun too. So I don't typically sell them, but you know, I also really like for my friends to come paint with me, and so sometimes I'll be like, I have this miniature, you should come paint it, and then you can take it home. So I like to personal paint and takes just to get people to come paint with me. Okay, so that's hopefully that answers your question there. Let's see. Do you seal your minis, or oh, and what sealant do you use? Okay, so some of my older miniatures that I have painted, like this beholder here and this dragon, you'll notice that they're pretty shiny. And so those are from like prior to me starting to take classes in miniature painting and me just kind of doing things. And I sealed those in like just a glossy spray, just a clear glossy spray. And that actually works just fine if you are tabletop painting. It just kind of is like a pretty just coat on top of them. But what I have kind of found as I take classes is that the glossy coat, actually you lose some of your detail. So if you really have a miniature that you really are liking the detail on that miniature, I would not recommend a glossy coat. And I would actually just recommend just a clear spray, just a matte clear spray. And I literally just use spray paint from Walmart. So I just spray my miniatures with a clear matte coat from Walmart when I do it. Okay, sealant. Yeah, so many unpainted miniatures. Yep, me too. Do you have any modeling clay sculpting to modify your pieces? Oh, okay. That is something we didn't do this weekend. We did not use any sculpting putty or anything like that. I don't usually like make putty or make miniatures from putty, although I have friends that do, and that's really cool. But I have used it to fill in creases on my miniatures. So like if there's a break between like the clothing and their skin and it looks kind of weird or awkward, or this dragon here, you can see that there's like a clear break where his tail begins there. So normally, even for tabletop, normally I would have filled that. I didn't want to take up our time during the painting sessions to do that, but that is something that on a normal basis I definitely would have filled in with putty. There's this stuff, and it's literally just called green stuff. And that's what I usually use for my putty and things like that. And then I have just some thin tools that I'll just kind of push that around and just make sure that it is kind of filling in those different creases and things like that to make sure it looks nice. So yes, I absolutely do use some sculpting putty and stuff like that, and this stuff that's called green stuff, to be able to fill in some of those creases to make my miniature look smooth and look like there's no like hard breaks that shouldn't be there, kind of thing. Okay, perfect. Yes. Thank you so much for mentioning Tabletop Gaming and Hobbies. They provided my miniatures for me, and they set up great kits for you guys. You guys can get those kits from Tabletop and watch the videos that I did for the owlbear, or the not the copper dragon, the gold dragon, and the tiefling. And what's really cool about the gold dragon is that it also came with fire, so that's fun, and a little pile of treasure, so that's really cool. Your dragon's already started with some treasure. And then the tiefling came with a brother, I guess, because they're both male figures. But he came with a brother here who's a spellcaster, and we didn't get into painting that one for this particular session, but it's kind of cool that it comes as a double set. So yes, please get those from Tabletop Gaming. Get the kits if you'd like to do a follow along with one of the ones I've done already. Let's see. Oh, yes. Next year, when we cross our fingers that we have Midwest Game Fest in person, I will be doing a paint and take for Midwest Game Fest. I absolutely love doing that, so please come visit us next year at the paint and take table. Do you have any tips of making making scenes with your minis? So let me think. Oh, actually, here I have this guy. So this guy, I did make a little kind of scene at the bottom. Now this guy is a ginormous spider, and so I didn't use as many things on here, although I probably would have loved to have like stuck a tree somewhere on here, but just to show his size difference. But you'll notice like the little bush that's down here, if you stuck a mini next to it, the bush is a pretty high bush, goes up about halfway up the mini. So does this one over here, if you put your mini next to those bushes. But I wanted some scenery on this guy to just show how big he is, how unnaturally large this spider is for tabletop gaming and things like that. And I have scared my players with it a couple of times. I love it. So anyway, so yes, I like to try and think of the scenery and like where might this critter be, what might they be doing in that area and things like that. And so then I will try and build on around that. And so I've used some sand over here. When I first used this miniature, he was in a plains area that had a lake nearby, and so I had some dirt and some forestry, and you'll notice that some of the greenery has made its way into the sand. So you know that some of those plants have grown up out of the sand just like they would kind of in real life and things like that. And so and I kind of wanted it to be kind of more fall colors, because like the spider kind of has like, I know the blue's not necessarily a fall color, but like his oranges and greens, and I wanted to be able to bring that out in the ground as well. And I really like these colors. I love fall colors, so I really liked these colors in these bushes and things like that. And so so I kind of tried to pull some of the colors from the spider into the ground area as well. And a lot of times animals kind of have these their fur or their skin or whatever kind of sometimes will match their environment that they're in, maybe like a camouflage kind of thing. And so I tried to think about that when I was doing this as well. I know that doesn't necessarily help for your humanoids, but for when you're making creatures and things like that, that can kind of help if you're trying to do like a more natural environment. Think about like what colors are on your creature versus where they are in your world that you're trying to represent them in. I hope that kind of helps with how we kind of decorate our bases sometimes. So that's if I'm building my own base. But sometimes you can get bases that are really already nicely pre-done. And so for this beholder, like all this stuff was already on there. All I had to do was paint it. Now I will say that for him in particular, I did add some other things on here. So I thought about him and how he is he's in a dungeon. He's got this like loot that he's kind of gathered, probably from devouring some of the adventurers that have come to see him. But he's in this like moist, wet dungeon. So what do I kind of do with that? So my tiles here are, they have a glossy coat over them, but they also have this paint that I have that is it just kind of makes things look like they're still wet. So it basically leaves a glossy coat over something. So even if you're not using a glossy paint, it would still leave a glossy coat. So I did that, and there's some red spots on here from those adventurers that he's maybe eaten, had encounters with. And then I had I added some like moss. So there's like this little moss stuff on there. And then on this side, I put some like green slime. So maybe some green slime has like kind of fallen on the floor off the ceiling or something. Maybe it's something that's spilt. And then I put the wet gloss over that, and then I also added some more fungus that's kind of growing around that, things like that. So I just kind of try and think about the environment that my critter's going to be in, and kind of see what I think he might have around him. So I do think we're kind of cutting close on time. Let me see. Let's see if there's any other questions real quick. You wouldn't want to fight that. Yeah, some of my players. I love the colors. Awesome. Thank you so much. Any tips for securing a big piece like that on the base so that it doesn't wobble or break? Okay, so I'm guessing that was probably based on the spider. So yeah, my spider was really challenging to glue in. So I tried to pick his legs that are really sturdy so that he actually sat pretty well by himself. But I made sure that the ends of his toes were well into the base. And so I actually built a lot of this base around him. So that way you can really see it in this one that's in the sand. So it kind of looks like his foot is just sinking into the sand a little bit, but really that was on purpose because I wanted it to be so sturdy. So yeah, so it can be very challenging. I would almost, for something like this, I would almost build your base around that creature. But for something like this one, where I kind of built some things around the creature, I really just glued him straight on there, and he sits really well. I've had him for a few years now, but the bottom part that I glued on there was like a real good solid spot for the size of the miniature, so I didn't really have to worry about him wobbling or anything. But yeah, this one I was very concerned about that, so I really had to be very purposeful and make sure that his legs were all the way down to the actual base, and I built things around them. So very good question. Okay. Oh man, so we've only got like a minute left. I'm so sorry, you guys. Thank you so much for all the great questions. I really hope that this helped a lot. If you have any other questions, or if you want to share any of your pieces with me, I would love to take a look at them. I love checking out other people's miniatures and seeing the creative things that they do. My name is Andy Diekman, and you can find me on Facebook just by looking for Andy Diekman. You can also email me your pictures if you just want to email me at diekman@ucmo.edu. Yeah, I thank you again so much for Midwest Game Fest, allowing me to talk to you guys and share with you all. It has been so much fun, and I really hope to get to see everybody in person next time. Thank you so much. Closing ceremony is at 6 p.m. tonight. Be sure you jump on and join us. Awesome. Thank you guys so much.